The slap echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. For a second nobody breathed. My wife Rebecca stood still, her cheek turning crimson under the fluorescent lights, and across from her, Hadley Cole, the self-proclaimed queen of our neighborhood, froze with her hand still half raised, as if even she couldn't believe what she'd done. 3 minutes later, a bailiff cuffed her wrists. 5 minutes after that, Rebecca sat in the judge's chair. Yeah, you heard me right. The woman she slapped was the one about to deliver justice. I'm David Johnson. I'm not the type of guy who goes looking for a fight. I build things, fix things, lend my ladder to the neighbor, and don't ask for it back right away. When my wife and I bought our home in Maple Grove, I thought we'd found peace, a quiet cul-de-sac with BBQs and summer kids on bikes, sprinklers whispering in the mornings. But peace has a funny way of attracting people who feed on control. And in our neighborhood, Control wore red lipstick pearls and a blazer that screamed authority, Hadley Cole, head of the HOA. She showed up the second night after we moved in, clipboard in hand, marching up our driveway like she owned the concrete. "Good evening," she said without smiling. "Just making sure you're aware trash bins must be hidden, fences need HOA-approved color, and those herb boxes on your windowsill. Not exactly cohesive with the neighborhood aesthetic." She said cohesive like it was a death sentence. Rebecca and I laughed it off at first. Every neighborhood has one right, a rule lover. We didn't know she was more than that. She was a tyrant with paperwork. The first notice came a week later, taped right to our door. Violation: unsightly leaves. Never mind, it was October. Never mind, everyone's lawn looked the same. We paid it, figured it'd smooth things over. It didn't. The fines piled up, a bench that didn't align with community tone, a mailbox that reflected poorly on aesthetic standards, and then the wheelchair ramp. Rebecca built it herself so her mom could visit. Simple, clean, safe. But Hadley declared it an unauthorized structure. That one crossed a line I couldn't ignore. Rebecca stayed calm. She started a folder. Each letter, each picture, every absurd citation filed, labeled, and stored. "We're not powerless," she told me. "We're patient." I didn't share her patience. Every time Hadley strutted past our house, clipboard in hand, jotting imaginary offenses, I wanted to march out there and shove that clipboard right down her throat. But I didn't. I bit my tongue because Rebecca's calm was stronger than my temper. Soon we realized we weren't her only victims. Susan Miller, the widow down the street, got fined for hanging wind chimes. Noise pollution, Hadley said. Bob Carter, a retired mechanic, got threatened with a lawsuit over a flagpole she claimed was too tall. Even Emily Newman, a college student renting a basement room, had been warned about improper parking. Everyone hated her, but no one dared speak up. Fear kept the neighborhood quiet, and Hadley wore that silence like a crown. One Saturday morning, she came with 2 board members' clipboard in one hand, sunglasses glinting like armor. She didn't greet us. She declared war. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson," she said loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "you've ignored multiple violation notices. If you fail to pay all fines within 72 hours, the HOA will pursue legal action, including property seizure." My blood boiled. Property seizure over leaves and a ramp for an elderly woman. Rebecca squeezed my hand and whispered, "Steady." But I could feel everyone watching: Susan peeking from her porch, Bob crossing his arms, Emily recording with her phone. Hadley's shrill voice echoed across the street, and I knew something in me had just snapped. This wasn't about a lawn anymore. It was about dignity. That night, Rebecca said, "We're taking her to court," and I swear the calm in her eyes scared me more than Hadley ever could. We filed the paperwork the next morning. Weeks passed. Letters turned to threats, threats to fury. Hadley sent one final ultimatum: pay $12,000 or face foreclosure. Rebecca closed the fat folder she'd been building for months and said simply, "It's time." The courthouse clerk raised his eyebrows when he saw the stack, hundreds of pages of proof, each signed by Hadley herself. The war had officially moved from the cul-de-sac to the courtroom. The morning of the hearing, the air felt heavy, like the walls themselves were bracing for impact. Hadley strutted in wearing that same crimson blazer, her heels clicking like gavels. She didn't take the defendant's chair, she occupied it like it was her throne. I sat beside Rebecca, trying to keep my fists unclenched. Judge Reynolds, Tall, gray-haired voice, sharp as glass, called the case to order. Johnson versus Cole. From the start, Hadley treated it like theater. She interrupted the lawyers, rolled her eyes, muttered insults under her breath. The judge warned her once, twice. She just waved a hand, smirking. "Your Honor," she barked, standing without permission. "The Johnsons have been a blight on our community. They refuse to comply. They don't belong." Gasps rippled through the gallery. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but Rebecca's calm hand rested on mine. "Wait." Our attorney began showing the evidence photos of violations, letters about pine cones, fines for unauthorized flora. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. The judge's eyebrows climbed higher with each page. Still Hadley couldn't shut up. "Those rules are necessary," she snapped. "Without me, the neighborhood would collapse," I whispered. Just loud enough. "Without you, it might finally breathe." Susan stifled a laugh behind me. That's when the storm truly hit. Our lawyer pressed her on the missing HOA funds, thousands in fines that never appeared in the association's account. Hadley sputtered, "That's none of your business." Judge Reynolds slammed his gavel. "It's very much this court's business, Miss Cole." She didn't stop. She jabbed her finger toward Rebecca. "She's been undermining me since day one. She's dangerous, manipulative. She doesn't respect authority." The room murmured in disgust. Rebecca didn't flinch. She just stared calm and steady, like watching a storm wear itself out. I remember thinking, she's going to break. And then she did. Hadley shot up from her seat, shaking with fury. "I won't let her make a fool of me," she screamed, and before anyone could react, she stormed across the aisle. The bailiff moved, but too late. The crack of her hand against Rebecca's face cut through the air like lightning splitting a tree. Everything froze. Rebecca's head turned slightly with the impact, her dark hair falling over her eyes. My heart stopped. I stood up, ready to tear Hadley apart, but Rebecca raised her hand without looking at me. Steady, commanding, unbroken. She rose slowly, brushed her hair back, and looked straight at Hadley. Her voice was calm, colder than steel. "You think that's power? That's fear." The silence that followed was suffocating. The judge's voice thundered. "Miss Cole, you are out of order." Bailiff. Officer Harris grabbed Hadley, who thrashed like a wild thing, shouting, "You can't do this to me. I run this community." The words rang hollow, pathetic. Rebecca just stood there, still as a mountain, and that's when everything shifted. The judge looked down at his papers, then at Rebecca. Something in his expression changed. He whispered to the clerk, who whispered back. "Check the credentials," he said. The bailiff blinked, stepped forward, and Rebecca nodded slightly as if to confirm whatever he'd just heard. The judge cleared his throat. "This court recognizes Mrs. Johnson not only as plaintiff in this case, but as a sworn member of the federal judiciary." Gasps rolled through the room. Hadley's face drained of color. "You're lying," she spat. "You're setting me up." But the judge held up a document. "Mrs. Johnson was appointed 3 years ago. Her record is spotless." Rebecca didn't gloat. She simply said, "I never wanted to reveal this. I wanted the process to be fair. But Miss Cole's actions crossed into criminal conduct. It's time the truth came out." The gallery buzzed. Cameras lifted. Emily whispered, "Oh my God, she's a judge." And Hadley. She screamed, "This is a conspiracy," but no one listened anymore. Judge Reynolds nodded solemnly. "Given the circumstances, Mrs. Johnson will conduct the review of evidence." Rebecca stepped forward. The courtroom fell into reverent silence. The red mark on her cheek stood like a badge of honor. She took her seat, Hadley's seat, and adjusted the microphone. "For too long," she said, voice resonant, "and even this HOA has been a tool of fear, not service. Today, that ends." The first exhibits were financial. Rebecca revealed the missing $10,000 checks deposited into Hadley's own account. The crowd gasped. Then came the testimonies. Susan stood trembling, describing how Hadley fined her for wind chimes. Bob followed, voice firm, recounting how his flagpole had been too patriotic. Emily played her video, the confrontation in front of our house, Hadley shouting threats about property seizure. Hearing her own voice echo through the courtroom broke something in Hadley. She sagged back, eyes wide, hands cuffed. Rebecca looked at her and said softly, "You poisoned this neighborhood, Miss Cole. You called it order. It was fear." Judge Reynolds, back in charge, now spoke clearly. "This evidence will be forwarded to the district attorney. Miss Cole, you are hereby removed from your position and will face charges of fraud and harassment." The bailiff led her out, still mumbling about conspiracies. Her crimson blazer wrinkled, pearls crooked, her crown shattered. And just like that, it was over. The crowd rose, not cheering but breathing again. The same neighbors who once hid behind curtains now stood tall, whispering to each other, relief washing over their faces. I sat there watching Rebecca gather her folder, page by page, calm and methodical, as if she'd just finished a normal day's work. My chest felt light for the first time in months. The woman beside me wasn't just my wife, she was justice in motion. As Hadley disappeared through the courthouse doors, cuffed and silent, I realized something simple, something I wish I'd understood months ago. Real power isn't loud, and it doesn't need to threaten. It just needs the truth and the courage to stand when it matters most.